Well, Jeff, in doing research for this interview, I found out that you have been a part of this sport for as long as you can remember. You basically grew up around this deal.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you say that, Rick. But I pretty much came out of 1 year of college down in East Carolina and found myself, helping people and being around the sport. In the early 70s, I had a chance to, I guess really the first time I ever helped anybody, believe it or not, was Tiger Tom Pistone. It was back when, in the early 70s, when they were still running the Grand American cars, the Mustangs and Camaros, against the Cup cars at places like Martinsville and Wilkesboro in particular. And that's where I was that day. I went up and kept laps and helped figure fuel mileage for the Tiger. And that day, Richard Petty had, I think, got a 3 or 4 lap lead on the rest of the field, and he started losing cylinders in that Plymouth of his, and Tiny Lung and the number 55 Pepsi, powder blue Camaro wound up unlapping himself and winning a race that day. So that was kind of like the beginning of, I guess you might call it a long relationship with the sport.
Now, you had actually gone to races at Charlotte. You grew up in the Charlotte area.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so
sir, I did.
you had gone to races at Charlotte forever.
I was sitting on the back straightaway, my first opportunity to see a stock car race, the day we lost Fireball Roberts, when Junior and Ned and all them crashed coming off of turn 2. We were actually sitting on the back of my dad and uncle's dump truck. We built a platform on the back of it, a little bit higher than the regular bed. And that's where I was sitting there the day that that big crash. I saw that crash. My uncle filmed that crash. He had it in 8mm footage of it, and pretty wild start to going to Charlotte. And then the first time I ever I personally bought a ticket was for the 600 a few years later, and sat in the grandstand. That's the only time I can remember that I've ever sat in the grandstand of a Cup race and watched it. But I went to at the time, anybody remembers the old original Sharpmo Speedway? There was a two-story house right there at the corner of 29 and I'm brain fade right now as far as the road runs right alongside of it. But it was right there at the corner, right in behind where Harry Hyde's shop was and Goodyear. I went in there and bought me a ticket, sat in the grandstand and watched the race that day. I love it. I mean, I fell in love with racing at the early age of 12, and it stuck with me.
Now, how many teams did you wind up helping out?
Independently, like I said, helped Tiger Tom Pistone, and went from there to help Tony Bentonhausen Jr. when he was running, making an effort here in the stock car area of his career, and he went back to Indy and run open wheel. A guy named Carl Adams, Frank Warren, Jim Vandiver, Elmo Langley, and the last one, I put it this way, I forgot, Skip Manning. I helped Skip Manning for a short period of time, and I wound up helping Walter Ballard. That was the gentleman I helped the most as far as an independent, team was concerned. I worked around Walter and them probably a year and a half or something like that.
Now, this may be legend, but did you hear about that on the school bus? Did you get connected with them? Did you know his daughters or something?
No, I actually, I think it really was just a situation of being around the racetrack itself.
Okay.
And I think the first introduction that I ever had to Walter Ballard was through Elmo Langley, because I'd called, I think, Elmo that weekend and said, "Do you need any help?" Because a lot of times, what I'd do, I'd get done with school and stuff, and I was old enough to drive, so I would go and ask guys, if you need some help this weekend, and if they needed help, they'd give you the $5. They'd pay you $5. That was your pit pass back then. And, you'd be up to your responsibility to get to the racetrack. And, places like Rockingham or, driving up to Bristol or whatever, it was not a long drive. And if I had to be up there on a Saturday or whatever, I mean, a lot of times I slept in the back seat of my car. So it's just a matter of how bad do you want it. And I think that weekend, Elmo said, "I've got enough help this weekend. Why don't you call or go see Walter Ballard? I think he's needing some help." And that's really about the way it occurred. And that's the reason why I was helping him. He was probably not that far from the house anyway. I only lived about maybe 3 or 4 miles where the crow flies, to where I had to go to the shop and work on it off 115.
Now, you also had a pretty successful high school football career, and you did go to East Carolina, as you mentioned. What was it like juggling football and whatever other sports that you played with your up-and-coming racing career?
It was a challenge, because like anybody that's ever been in a sport of racing, you run weekends, and a lot of times you've got to work on your race car during the week. So, going to practice and in games on Friday night, it stressed you quite a bit. But, my mom and dad had a strict rule. If you're going to race, you still got to take care of your schoolwork. And I think that's, kept me motivated to make sure that when I got done with my schoolwork, I'd go out and work on the race car, dirt car that we ran. And in the meantime, I never did, not miss practices and anything like that I needed to do. So, it kept me busy. But it made me more disciplined, probably helped keep me out of trouble when I was growing up, because I couldn't go hang out with my buddies or anything. I had to sacrifice really, hanging out when everybody else had cool cars, to drive around at night and go to the different drive-in either movies or the restaurants that were around that you go get your milkshake like everybody does and play loud music and squall your tires. I didn't do a lot of that. I was too busy in the shop or trying to do my schoolwork.